Well, hi, and welcome to the second part of our songwriting masterclass. We're going to be talking about the song I Surrender with Matt Crocker, who wrote the song. But one of the reasons I think it'd be really interesting to talk about this song, it's obviously a song that we've been singing for a long time in our church, but is to go back and talk a little bit about the process of writing that song and even what's changed for you as a writer over like those years of writing, because I think there's something about any song that you bring that's always, it comes from a really pure place, and it's full of passion, and you can hear that it's come out of your own worship and your own devotional life. You've never lost that, but I'm interested to know how the process has changed over those years and that approach. So Han, I don't know if you want to launch in and ask Maddie some questions, and let's get into the song I Surrender.
Yeah, I remember because I actually got to be a bit of a fly on the wall when this song was being written. So I remember we were at a youth conference, and one of our youth pastors had kind of said, let's start this conference differently. Typically it would be like a big opener type moment, something loud and energetic, but he was like, let's start it with a worship song. And I have this really clear picture, Matt, of you sitting in the back dock at church with your acoustic for a long time, trying to figure out what this song was meant to be. Do you remember that?
I do. I remember it well. It was Nick Crocker. It was, I guess he was speaking on the first night of what was called Encounter Fest. It was like our youth conference. And for a few weeks, he was like, I want you to write a song that's going to kind of encompass the night, the opening, the first night of that conference. And he was speaking on hunger and thirst. And so he I kept showing him ideas for a couple of weeks, and every time I showed him something, he loved the ideas, and I was like, I don't think it's it. I don't think it's right. And then it was literally like the night before, and I'm texting him going, man, I've got nothing. I don't have anything. I got a verse, and that's about it. So he's like, come to my house. I'm going to keep writing my message because I got nothing either. And it sounds great when you're running a youth conference and you got nothing the night before. Anyway, so I went to his house, and he just kind of was sharing with me what he was thinking he wanted to speak on, which had obviously been brewing in his spirit for a little bit. And so I just took that idea of hunger and thirst and really clung to that. And so I went home still with nothing but a verse. And the next morning I had to get up. They were doing a leadership thing throughout the day beforehand, and I had to sing at it. I had to lead worship for it. So on top of trying to do a song and lead worship at this youth pastor's leadership course, it was nonstop, racking my brain the whole time, freaking out because I'm like, I got to have something, and everyone's expecting something. And I just trusted God, and I was just like, if this is something I've got to do, and I'm trusting you, God, I'm going to step out. And by the end of it, throughout the day, I just kept chipping away at it, which is probably what you're talking about, Hannah, seeing me just whenever I wasn't on stage leading, just out in the back, just trying to finish this song. And it was it wasn't, there was no collaboration. The only collaboration was probably just Nick kind of sharing with me what he wanted to talk about, but just really I looked at people that I'd written with, like Jolie and all these guys, and just seeing what they'd done in the past, leading to usually what was a youth conference with what we did. We'd always bring new songs at youth conferences. I was like, I just got to push in and just really trust God. And so literally up to rehearsal, I just kept writing, and I wasn't even sure of it. I was like, I think this could be good. And then from the moment we started rehearsing, I showed the guys, I didn't have any recording. We're talking about showing recordings at this thing, but I was like, I actually don't think iPhones were even a thing then. And I only had 24 hours. I didn't record anything. It was just literally just going. And so we rehearsed it a couple of times, and it obviously just felt like God breathed on the song in the rehearsal. And it was one of those moments I'll just never forget. And then we did it, and it's been awesome. It was a privilege to be a part of what that song's become, I guess. So it's pretty cool.
It's so good. It's interesting to me because I don't know, there's sometimes a fine line between simple and devotional, but then a song like I Surrender, I remember that moment too. It was so special. It's just the presence of God just poured out on the meeting, and it was actually really unbelievable, that moment. And I don't know, what do you think about that whole idea of you can't force those things. We can't force God to show up like that. But there seemed to be something about that moment that kind of opened up the door for him to just move. How do you find that line between just a simple devotional song, but also find a way for it to be timely and kind of right for the moment?
Obviously, like I kind of said before, like I just trusted the process over to God, because I was freaking out. I was like, I've got to do this thing no matter what. And I look back, it's funny because I'm not necessarily like a strong lyricist. Like I can write lyrics, but they're not like melody again is like the thing I cling to. And so I had some themes that I was going off in that, but I always look back on songs and you can see God's sovereign over a song. Like it's funny, like obviously it touches on Acts 2 and the bridge and everything. But like for me, I was just imagining like, I was imagining people like a persecuted church and like other things, like what do they want to sing? Like what is the thing you would sing if you're in that circumstance? And so I guess that's what you're talking about. For me, like I'm writing out of feeling and stuff like that. And so I was putting myself in a position where like, what would I sing to you, God? What would I cry out if that was me in that moment? And it would be, I guess that song is what I would be crying out to God. And then needing the Spirit of God to enable me, empower me in that moment to get through whatever it is that people face on a day-to-day basis. And so, but it's just, I love looking back on things that I've done and knowing that God was in it and that his hand was on it, so.
One of the really interesting parts of that is hearing you speak about like kind of feeling like you didn't know where to take the song, you didn't have even a lot to work with. I've got this memory of when I first moved to Sydney and being at Ruben's place and just seeing like these stacks of things. There might have even been cassettes or CDs, you know, just going back into the 70s. No, but I remember seeing like all of your demos, like, and you were sending Ruben songs like all the time. And to me, that's just, it's etched in my mind because you were writing so much. And you, through just going through the process of writing and getting better at the craft of songwriting, you put yourself as a songwriter in a position where when you are in that moment where you've got 24 hours to finish a song and you don't have a lot to work with, that there's all of these tools that you can pull from, all of these ideas that you've probably started, lyrical thoughts and things that you can pull into the mix and put together. So I just want to honour you for that, man, because you've spent a lot of years doing that. Think back to I Surrender and then through to today. What's changed for you as a writer?
Hopefully I've gotten like better, I don't know if that's the right word, but like I've grown as a songwriter. And I also don't think like a lot of it hasn't changed because hopefully the spirit that's within me of who I am is something that's not changing throughout that, and it's still just, I'm literally just hungry and thirsty for more of God. And like, I think for me, whenever I'm writing for church, kind of like Han said earlier in the other session about putting myself in the picture of church and like what people need to be singing, I guess. And so for me as a songwriter, like I feel like that's what I'm called to do, not just write songs for the sake of writing songs, obviously above all like glorifying God, but I think we're called, and the mandate on this church, our house, is to write songs, put words in people's mouths that they can sing, declare, that are actually going to uplift their spirits and focus them on God, especially in times like this. So I think just growing, I think what's been awesome is watching more and more people in the journey, and like throughout the years, like there's like all these younger guys, like Ben's not that young anymore, but like these guys who are like crushing it and writing some incredible songs, and it's just blessing, like, you know what I mean? Hopefully the outreach of what we do is ever reaching because of God's hand on what we do.
Can I just ask, how do you know when your song's done? Because you're saying that you had the deadline here, so obviously you're just like, oh, it just has to be done. But if you didn't have a deadline, then how do you know? Like, I always have this problem. How do you know when it's done?
That, obviously this song, I feel like this song is not the easiest song to like put in other categories because it was such a quick, like, had to be done. That one, I kind of was like, I just had a hunch, maybe like, I think it's done. It's close enough. I actually don't have any more time to keep writing it, so it is what it is. But for me, usually like, especially collaboration, like having people around me, I think half of songwriting is being a bouncing board. Like someone can bounce off you, and actually like in a session, you know, it's harder to know if your idea is good other than knowing if someone else's idea is good. So for a song, when it's just you writing it, it's actually like, you only know once you do it, I think, and you kind of see people singing it and the reaction and the response. So that one was, I think, different to any song I've ever done, where I just kind of, I knew when we rehearsed it, I was like, okay, there's something on this, like, obviously. But every other song, I don't know if you ever really know till you hear people sing it and you see how they react to it. And like the cool thing for us is because we're a church, we get that opportunity to sing these songs with our congregation and our people.
Well, mate, thanks so much. I feel like there's so much in that for writers to glean from, both the hard work that's required to as a writer to get to the point where you can take a great idea and make it something that's a finished song, right through to never losing that necessity to be hearing from God and to be, desperate to be able to communicate what it is that God would want his people singing. So hopefully that's encouraged you. And join us in the third part where we're going to talk about the song Never Walk Alone.